Well, good morning, everybody. As I normally do, I want to start you off with yesterday's satellite data just before sunset because we got a good look under some of the clouds at where the snow is. So you can see there's quite a bit of it that rolls right into this part of the Midwest, upper Midwest, getting over here into the eastern Great Lakes. Of course, the lake effect snow has been pretty amazing so far this year. And then we can also see the snow that came through parts of the central and southern Rockies, including some of that snow that was out here on the Front Range, which was, I'll be honest with you, is pretty well forecast by some of the models, in my opinion. Other things we've been paying attention to this week, the Thule fog, we actually watched some of it evaporate a bit yesterday, and maybe for some of you saw the sun for the first time in a while here in the Sacramento Valley and parts of the Central Valley of California. But bigger feature here is this cloud shield that's moving across parts of the southeast. And we've had broader ridging here, and with the cold shots coming through this area, we've kind of just put the squeeze on the atmosphere in this region, and that's pulled out some moisture in that area, which has been hugely beneficial in this area. But I spent yesterday in Sioux Falls, and I was talking with some of the growers there, and we kind of had a conversation about getting some of the snow to melt right now. And that conversation was around reviving some soil moisture. Now, this is a map showing this morning here at 6 a.m. what the soil temperatures as modeled are from the European model. So we were trying to understand underneath that soil, how cold is it at 4 inches? And we're pretty darn close to freezing. So which means if you can get some mild air in place and start to melt that snow, you will be able to get some of this to get back into the ground. And we need to get it into the ground. So as I was kind of watching this, by the way, you can always go look at an animation of your soil temperatures here. And we're just keeping an eye on when we get up there and almost touch that 32. And we're just curious if we're able to get any sort of a melt out of this. So let me just flip you over from the 4-inch soil temperatures over to the air temperatures at 6 feet or 2 meters. Now, this morning was very, very cold right here across this part of the Midwest. We saw mild air coming in behind this, quite a bit of it. And again, we're pretty cold along the Rockies here with a recent snowpack that came through and also into the Northeast. Watch what the temperatures are doing here over the next couple of weeks. Now, this is a pattern that's going to be set up to give us lots of clippers. And clippers bring in very quick hits of cold air that come in like this. It's mild across the south and west. It's, this whole region just tends to kind of stay away from it in this particular setup. But we're going to watch this particular avenue for these shots at colder air. But in between, we can get some warmer conditions. Like look at this Monday, 6 p.m. December the 8th. We're going to be bringing above freezing temperatures pretty far to the north here through the plains. And then as that colder air exits east through the Great Lakes, take a look at the Tuesday afternoon temperatures on December the 9th. So we were watching, I was actually talking with a guy yesterday, like, hey, watch next Tuesday for a warm up enough that might start to make a dent in melting some of that snow and then possibly getting some of it. There's not a lot of water in that snow, but some of it into our topsoil before we freeze it off again. So then we keep going, and look, there's your next kind of big push at colder air through the Midwest. It goes all the way to the Northeast. And what I notice is these just keep coming in pulses, right? And that's what we're going to be getting here. That's going to be the name of this whole game. The flow is just coming around and making the turn. And in the middle, there's a massive void where we're not going to be seeing, honestly, almost any precipitation. And because of the placement of the ridge, that void extends all the way into the southwest where it's dry. But I do have something to talk to you about in terms of getting some southwest flow in the atmosphere, but it's not in the next couple of weeks. It's beyond that. But I want to show you some stuff we're looking at here in just a few moments. All right, I did want to just show you, don't forget, you can go to agweather.com and you click on the local weather, put in your location. This is where I live, a little town called Muhammad outside of Champaign. And I'd like to make a point. Can you see it now? Warm up clipper. See how it's doing that? But look at this. You get out there, this isn't this Sunday, but next Sunday. So we're a full 9-10 days out. And the AI model is splitting away from the GFS, which is here, and definitely into the Euro. See that? And so we have some interesting kind of behavior happening, especially in the artificial intelligence model, getting out there pretty far in the forecast. So I want you all to monitor this with me as we go forward. All right, bigger picture, though, is don't forget, and I don't map this on AgWeather. I should. I'll start doing that soon, I promise. But another way to look at the snow is to use the model's calculated snow depth. All right. So in other words, the model's always keeping track of how much snow is on the ground at any given point. Now, these are the maps from WeatherBell, so I don't use the same color scale that they do. Similar colors, but not the same color scale. They go over to blue at 2 inches, just to be clear here. Now, why I'm showing you this is we're attempting to see where the snow depth is changing as a function of time. And I'm looking for any melt in this. I mean, that's just where I was focused the second half of this week, so let's just talk to these folks. Now, through Friday getting into Saturday, you'll notice another wave of snow coming through this area. But that's not when we're expecting a little warm-up. That warm-up is coming Monday, Tuesday. So this is Sunday night into Monday, and as we get up to the more mild air on Tuesday, see that eroding here? And as it erodes on this side, we could start to get some of that in there with that brief warm-up, some of the moisture back in the soil. But as you can imagine, there's clippers coming. See the next one coming right there? Look at that. Again, I apologize. I'm focusing a lot on this because that's the mainstay of the atmospheric flow right now. Not a whole lot is going on elsewhere in this pattern. So you see that by the end of next week, we've got another shot of some snow coming through. And so we just need to understand the way this pattern is kind of shaping up in terms of delivering that snowfall. One major thing that did happen this week that I'll be honest was pretty well forecast was how we were going to be having some frontogenesis, the creation of a front down here along the Gulf Coast. And as you can see, we did get over the last 7 days some very, very much needed rainfall. But that rain did not get everywhere in this pattern. And there's been a pretty sharp cutoff right in through here where you get into this. These are extremely productive agricultural counties in southern Georgia. And then you get into Florida's ag. And Florida's been too much under the ridge, and as a result, it's been very dry. And right in through here, I mean, you go across the state, you go from a ½ inch to almost 2.5 inches in some places here. Now, the problem is that going into this whole region was extremely dry. About 2 weeks ago on the 21st of November, you can see how dry we were here. Now, this has been a issue for a while, right? The dryness that's been in the Midwest, upper Midwest, the dryness that's been in the Golden Triangle, pockets of the Northwest United States. We've talked a lot about that. But because that rain came through, we've kind of, at some places completely eliminated some of our major drought risk. But just take a look right there at that sharp divide. There's some areas that are still very, very dry down there. We did get some new drought data, and you can see that area is in exceptional drought. And we still have a significant portion of the country as of the December 2nd drought monitor that is under drought. We're probably sitting somewhere around 65%. In fact, let's just go have a look at it real quick. I'm going to go to data, time series. There we go. Continental United States. Let's just zoom in on the end of this. And yeah, we're 67% covered in some form of drought, 41% in D1 to D4 at this point across the United States. So the question is, will the pattern help alleviate any of this? And over the next 15 days, we have watched the jet stream get bunched up here in the Pacific. It's doing something like this. And part of this is coming around a trough that's extending now into the Gulf of Alaska and over toward Alaska and running just like that and then accelerating across the Atlantic. So this whole region in through here is going to be sitting under mid and upper level high pressure. So we set up a clipper track, which comes through like this. But on the northwest flow in winter, we're going to look at very, very dry conditions into the midsection of the country. Just looking at it, this is what the jet stream kind of is doing in that pattern. That's what I try to draw for you. There's your Pacific high. So this just bombards British Columbia. This bombards Washington now. And the pattern then dips and runs, okay? And the issue with this is, clippers all day long, but this is the southwest flow that if you could take this high right here and just move it over or move it away, you could get flow that does that. See what I'm doing here? Just phase shifting this whole pattern. And if that were to occur at any point, if we could move this Pacific high around, we would be, oh my goodness, we'd be talking about nonstop winter storms that enter California, eject in the central and southern Rockies, race across the Midwestern United States through the Ohio Valley and exit east, and everyone's going to deal with it. Those are your most colorful all-hazard map type days in the middle of winter. But instead, we're here. Okay, so the presence of that ridge, which is sitting in some place like this, is keeping much of California and the southwest out of the flow. The flow is going over the top. See it? So we hit the northwest hard. We hit parts of, the Rockies here, the northern Rockies hard. We get clippers that roll through, but we leave a large area here that's very, very dry in this particular pattern. That's where we are right now. We might be there for another few weeks, getting us to, if we don't see this change by the solstice, which will be on the 21st, then I'm concerned about December just hanging on to this pattern, okay? Now, let's get into the kind of details of this. We do have winter storm warnings out for the Rockies, winter weather advisories that stretch from Montana, and then jump over here into parts of, South Dakota, getting into Iowa, where there's winter storm warnings. And we have some snow exiting here in parts of Virginia West Virginia, even the eastern side of Kentucky and Tennessee, and also North Carolina. Hard freeze going on down here in parts of southern Arizona, and the winds. Remember, we talked about these a lot this week. In fact, let's go do something real quick. If I just go to agweather.com, we click on, actually, you can just click on weather maps. I keep a wind map always going on this. You just slide down here. It's right there below my 2-week precipitation, and this is wind gusts. Ready for these? Look at what's happening this weekend in the Northwest. There's some very strong winds coming through the Columbia Basin, eastern half of Oregon, Snake River Valley, then into parts of Wyoming. And then we're going to see more of that. Look at this coming in next Tuesday, Wednesday. Very, very strong winds in this area. So I just want you to be aware of what we're monitoring in those particular regions, okay? So that's what this is all about here initially. All right, let's get a high-resolution model in here just to see what's going on. This is early this morning, so we can already see the models trying to turn this over to snow here in Virginia, West Virginia, mostly in rain across most of North Carolina. One little clipper sneaks through. There it is. But the one we're talking about is coming through the northwest. Look at this moisture coming in the northwest. Montana's going to grab some more heavy snows out of this. We had some locally very heavy snows earlier this week. Where are you in time? This is Saturday morning, Saturday midday. And there's your next little clipper. See it? Right into their weak low pressure system. And that's the one we're going to watch spread some decent snows into parts of the Midwest as it just clips its way through the Great Lakes and leaves. Now we are still watching the atmosphere bring high pressure here, high pressure sitting here. So we are expecting to get some moisture down into those very, very dry counties in northern Florida, southern Georgia, where we just analyzed. But total snow out of this, let's just use the NAM model to get an idea. Here we are. Now remember, similar color scheme, but I go over to blue at 4 inches. So there's a nice little swath in through here of decent amount of snow. Same thing for here in the Appalachian Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains too, which I guess they extend a bit farther south. But what this mountainous region in through here, and then still more in our central and northern Rockies and the northern Cascades. Speaking of snow, don't forget we've added new maps on the AgWeather website. You can look at 5 different maps all at once on snow. We're going to look closer at these in a few moments, but you can see that path, right? It's in all the models as to where we're expecting that snow to come through given the clipper track. Should get a new up there. This is the newest update on the WPC forecast. That's the 7-day total precip. Need every drop of this to come in through here. There's your clipper track. So just remember, there's not a lot of water in this snow. All right? Great Lake effect behind it. But if you are in this region, getting all the way over here into the southwest, there's a huge chunk of the country left out of this flow, and that's very, very problematic going forward. Now, some of the moisture that you see here is coming around. Look at this. Our Bermuda high is trying to squeeze its way back in. See it? And that's opening things up. But if we could get this to really build in toward the south and east and change the flow in this direction, one, it'll get mild. Southwest flow will come through here and just rip off systems. We're not there right now. We have too much of a high pressure cell sitting off the west coast. So little clippers, see them just sneaking through the flow is what we're dealing with in the near term. All right, let's compare models. GFS left, European right. We've already seen through the system. There it is, coming off of the Rockies into the central U.S., going through the Great Lakes east. And while we're getting that, to the south, we're getting rain. You will notice in this entire animation, this particular quadrant of the country is not going to see a slowdown at all in the flow coming off the Pacific. That is the moisture running over the ridge. So the northern Cascades, northern Rockies, British Columbia's mountain range, big time snows, okay? Now, after this little system, here it is in both models, goes through the Great Lakes on Tuesday morning, then you're going to get this chance of a mild day right in through here, okay? That's when we're watching that brief warm-up that could melt some snow, but watch what the atmosphere does right after it. Clips you again, right in through there on December the 9th. And again, more flow in the northwest. Models are in good agreement by December 10th, 11th, and 12th. They start to split out there about a week. Can you see the difference? European drops another clipper. GFS spreads a front farther to the south. And that's typical. You get about a week and they start to separate from one another. That little band of snow right there is why when you look at the GFS compared to the European model snowfall, Europeans doing a lot of this. Great Lake effect going there. There's your snow happening now. Northern Rockies, heavy snows. Cascades, heavy snows, and definitely up into British Columbia. The Euro AI looks similar, all right? But the GFS, look, see this? That was the difference on the placement of that front. Good agreement in the west, but just a bit different in where that snow swath is going to be in the models. And the model that tries to blend all this, the NBM, gives you something like this. And you can see it washes out some of those features when it looks at not only those operational runs, but all of the ensembles as well. So again, you kind of got your 3 different paths for snow going forward. Now, I always like to just take out some of the uncertainty by looking at the European ensembles probability maps, okay? So this is the 10-day chance at getting another 3 inches. If you want to see what 1 inch looks like, it's that, okay? But the 10-day 3-inch probabilities, you can start to pick up on a few heavier snow corridors here, all right? If we go up to 6 inches, there you go. So we have to watch that next system sneaking through here, and then right in through this corridor as well. And then 12, I went to 18, sorry, but 18, big snows here. We're loving this. We need every ounce of this, okay? Moisture-wise, though, 10 days, this is the probability it's staying under 1/10 of an inch. And now that large sector down here in the southern plains, the Four Corners states, most of it at least, the southern Four Corners states into California and Nevada, very dry. If you're wondering who's staying under 1/2 of an inch of total liquid, just remember, clippers bring systems through, but they do not have a lot of moisture in the snow. So this is a drier outlook. The only folks that are wet are here in the northwest and then right down there and then off the Great Lakes. And I've got in the northwest chance of 2 inches of liquid equivalent, chance of 4 inches of liquid equivalent, chance of 8 inches of liquid equivalent. That is where the fire hose is just focused right now. And again, it's just this. See it? Coming around the top. All right, by week 2, where's that ridge? Well, the models, once we get out there, trying to anchor the upper level ridge closer to California. So yes, there's still flow coming over. Trough still living here. But beyond this is now the December 13th, 14th, 15th. Models were hinting, and Matt covered this a lot yesterday. They were trying out here around the 17th and 18th to just drop off a huge system born on some southwest flow, which isn't there now, and just swing a trough through here and rip it across the country. As it stands, the models are still waffling around out there, and I'm going to make a case, I think, for why in a moment, but the net effect of it is that your 2-week maps on precipitation, you can see they all kind of have a similar look to them. And that's a lot of drier weather here to the south and wetter across the north. So we don't seem to be shaking that pattern just yet. On to temperatures. Now, yesterday was a brutally, brutally cold morning here, all right? The temperatures have warmed up in some places 40 degrees, but they're still below freezing. That's how cold it was. We were in the minus 10, minus 12 range here. So now we're closer to, well, here's what the low temperatures were. Okay, they've really come up. But as we go forward, we just see these rounds of colder air coming in. Now, these are minimum temperatures. What I'm watching, though, that's Monday. Now watch here, Tuesday. That is the warm-up. We're going to have to watch very carefully in this region to see if it brings in enough mild air to melt some snow. The whole time period is mild west compared to historical averages. And again, these are minimum temperatures each day that we're looking at. But this is the preferred route for the coldest air in each one of these clippers. And you can see it a little bit better when you look at the European ensemble average. There's your next 5 days. That's out there, day 5 through 10. I mean, it's just not quitting. The flow wants to do that. So mild west, cold track in through here. And it's been getting farther to the south, I think, than models originally forecast. Now we're out here looking at the week or the 5-day period ending on December 18th. So that's 13th through the 18th. And then even farther beyond. I wonder how hard the models are going to hang on to this. To understand that, I went and looked at a few different things. I've been showing you these for weeks, and I love them. They're making a lot of sense to me. But look at this. Okay, this is critical. Remember how we keep going after where those blues are? All right, let's go back in time. So that crosses the line right there. That's where we've been. That, okay, is the big trough that's been living here, right? So you've had this flow that's done this. That's the trough that's in this area. What is interesting about that is we start to notice this ridge that works its way in, and I'm very curious if this shows up in the models. Now, what is that? That would be a return, not until after the 13th, 14th, or 15th. That's how far out we have to go to see this. But there might be a return of some sort of troughing feature in the western United States. And I've been reading all your comments. I've replied to as many as I can. That if this occurs, gives you some southwest flow again. Now, that's not a guarantee on anything big, but it is the reason why the models are doing this. What's going on for the next couple of weeks? All right, we've talked about it. Ridge, flow over the top, Dry here, clipper track. Got it? That's it. Now watch. You go out there past the 13th, 14th, 15th, get fully into the middle of the month, and let's just take a look at the week ending on, how about Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? And you see this showing up here? This is where we start to see the high move away, and we get rid of flow like this. And if we just keep moving it, what ends up happening is the flow tries to return and come through the country like that. Meaning that leading up to Christmas week, the west and also in through here could start to see flow that does this. Now is this a bit of me just looking for something different? Yeah, it is. Okay, but is there any reason to think that could happen? Sure. I mean, remember how we've been talking about this? The MJO was just stacked for months. La Niña controlled it and it broke free. Right, there it is. That is the MJO sliding. Here comes the counterpart to it, the subsidence. And then we go right back into another phase like this. And then we have some subsidence. That kind of motion across the MJO, it tells me that the pattern is doing something. It's moving. And while all of that is happening, our La Niña is trying to give up. Through the end of November to the beginning of December, this is fading. Watch it again. That's a 90-day animation. We were quite strong in September and into October. Look at that thing. Plenty of trade wind action here. But toward the end of this animation, now we're into November, watch some of these cold anomalies begin to fade. See how they fade there? And that fade can be seen by looking, as Matt's been pointing out, at the very tail end of this, we're starting to see the ocean temperatures in the central equatorial Pacific climb. They're no longer diving down. We can add to that something we talked about earlier this week, the Southern Oscillation Index. It's a measurement of the pressure patterns that drive the trade winds. And when the Southern Oscillation Index, like a stock market index, is very positive, you're in La Niña. We think maybe this La Niña reached a peak with its trade wind behavior. I don't know, maybe right here. Maybe it was toward the end of November. And it has crashed ever since. Now, it's not just going to keep going down. It will bounce around because that MJO is still moving. It's all part of one system. We break it apart to understand it as humans. The atmosphere, it's one big, massive, nonlinear connected system, right? But that drop there back towards 7 would indicate that we are bouncing now toward INSO-neutral conditions. We'll see waves that could give La Niña-like behavior through December into early January, but I think it's starting to fade. And the biggest indicator is right in through there. A change up across the equator of increased westerly winds, when you look at the entire depth of this, could be critical. Now, if these winds were only at the top of the atmosphere, then all I would be talking about is full-on La Niña. But this is a vertical integral. So we have to have that flow showing up through the entire vertical profile of the troposphere. And as a result, I think this increase in momentum is more symptomatic of the La Niña kind of letting go of the reins a little bit. The biggest signals here, you don't get that a lot when they have La Niñas. So what is the point of all of this? Well, I'm waiting. Later today, they will release the new European seasonal forecast. So it's just not out yet. But I went out and picked out some analogs, and I'm not confident in my analog choices right now. I can tell you that some of these years I'm still hung up on this one, just to let you know, 2017 into 2018. Okay, that's a big one. But through January, the models are trying to move that high a little farther out. And what happened in those January, February, and Marches was this. We tended to get colder west. And you know why I like this? Is because the flow of the atmosphere is always between where it's cold and warm. That would give you here. And if that occurs, our precipitation pattern tends to excite a lot of systems here. What I'm curious about is why, if it was just a couple of these years that were so dry out in the west that it's biasing the statistics, because I'll be honest with you, if you're going to make it cold here, you will have flow that comes through California. And it'll roll like this. And could we be a bit drier into Texas? Maybe. But if these are panhandle hookers that show up, no. And if they drag fronts all the way through Florida, this won't be that dry either. But that's what I think the pattern might do. And I want you to know my confidence on this is not high. I'm not confident that the mix of years I've chosen here are the best. I need to spend more time on it this weekend thinking it through. All right. Let's finish up with a bit on South America. This is the last week of precipitation across most of all of South America. But notice across a big chunk of Brazil, we were dry here. We had some interior rains in Argentina, but Buenos Aires, Santa Fe, maybe missed out on some of this. You look back over the last month, we can see this drier spot has been there. We've been a bit drier and through here in northern Argentina as well. The big question will be, all right, given this dryness, understanding that it is early in the season, will this model forecast verify? And what I'm talking about specifically is coming off the Andes. By the time we get into the weekend, here it is, that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. See that low spinning up right there? If that feature, watch it again, this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, does in fact show up. There's a low right there, okay? If this does curl itself up and brings rains into this area, that puts a pretty big Band-Aid on the problems that have been had in that region. And you notice it's followed up with a front. So the low goes spinning off like this, all right? And the front is left in this area. And that could be hitting some key geographies that have been dry with some big rains. Anomalous, well, let's look at total precipitation if you'd like. Start adding this up. We're looking at some, that's through Monday. Now look, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're bringing in some significant rains here. How much? This would be 2 to 3 inches. In some places we're now up here 4 or 5 inches. That's it. Is the model going to be right about this or not? That'll be the question. So early next week, when we go through these forecast videos, we got to watch that. And we'll do it together, all right? I appreciate all your attention this week as we were running around the country talking about the weather in different places. Have a good weekend. Be safe. And we'll just talk on Monday morning. Thank you.